Hello again. We're here with Robert Bolton, who is running for Taylor County Magistrate. Robert, thank you for joining us on the program. We're glad you're here.
I'm glad to be here as well, Alex. Thank you.
Well, let's kick things off. Tell us a little bit about yourself and about your campaign.
Okay. Well, my full name's Robert Lee Bolton III. I'm the son of Patricia Mollahan from here in Grafton, and my father is Robert Bolton Jr. from Flemington. I am the current Taylor County Magistrate. I was appointed by Judge Alan D. Moats and took office in April of 2015. I'm currently serving. In addition to being magistrate, I'm also in the evening hours a college professor for Fairmont State University. I primarily teach classes that focus on political science. And then in addition to that, I also am an attorney. I graduated from undergrad at Fairmont State University with double majors in political science and history, graduated summa cum laude, and then I went on to Wake Forest University School of Law, and once I graduated from there, I came back to Taylor County and have been here ever since.
Great. Okay. So while you're obviously you're a current magistrate now, you're running for magistrate. Folks at Taylor County, explain a little bit about what the magistrate does. What's the role of the magistrate?
Okay. Well, we're a court of both criminal and civil jurisdiction. We handle all misdemeanor criminal cases from the initial warrant and arrest all the way through trial and to sentencing. And also we handle civil matters up to $5,000. So, for example, if one party chooses to sue another for $4,500, we would be the ones who would hear that case and ultimately decide it. In addition to that, we also hear domestic violence petitions. And we also handle traffic court matters. For example, if the Taylor County Sheriff's Department or the state police or the DNR officers would issue a ticket, we would deal with those as well. One other issue that magistrates in Taylor County handle that some other counties do not is we also handle mental hygiene hearings. So if someone's suffering from mental illness or if they're suffering from an addiction, we make a determination whether or not they are in fact suffering from that ailment. And then we take them into custody and make sure that they receive the type of proper treatment they deserve.
Makes sense. So the magistrates may be different than some of the other offices that we're interviewing in this, where there's not really a legislative role in it. But what do you see as you go in? If you're to be elected, what is your number one priority, and how would you like for your legacy as Robert Bolton, the magistrate of Taylor County, how would you like that to be seen?
Well, my first and main priority is ensuring that every citizen who comes before me, either in a civil or a criminal case, gets equal treatment before the law. They're entitled to that as American citizens, and I always try and remember that when I take the bench. In regard to day-to-day personal matters as a magistrate, one thing that I'm exceptionally proud of that I already do is when I have a case that's before me, I will sometimes entertain either a motion or an original warrant or something of that nature, and then I'll have to decide whether or not to approve it. If I end up denying it, what I normally like to do is that I research the case law and the statutes, and then I cite that case and those statutes in a written document, an opinion, and present that to the party that I've denied their motion, or if it's an officer, I cite the case law for the criminal complaint that I've denied. And even though they may not be particularly happy with that result, at least they can begin to understand my reasoning and why I came to the conclusion I did. And I'd like to think, if I leave Taylor County Magistrate Court either next year or years from now, I'd like to think that I've left the legal community in a better educated position than when I started.
Perfect. So another thing different with this office than some of the others, it's still like others, it's a nonpartisan election. So this primary is the election. You won't be carrying on into the general, correct?
That is correct.
But you do have an opponent in this race. So if you will, and again, asking more about lifting yourself up as opposed to what we see on the presidential level, which is an embarrassment to most of us. How do you distinguish yourself from your opponents or others who have served as a magistrate?
Well, one thing that far and away most magistrates they are not attorneys. There are about a half dozen of us that are currently attorneys throughout the state of West Virginia. There are a few others. It's becoming increasingly popular for attorneys to run for that position. And maybe 10 years from now, it will be an attorney-only position. But for the moment, any eligible citizen who's an adult is able to run. However, like I said, what I believe makes me uniquely qualified is the fact that I am an attorney. I have former experience working in the prosecutor's office. I previously had a private practice, both when I was after I graduated and passed the bar, and when I was working for the Clarksburg firm at near Highland and Munn and Varner while in law school during the summer. And I've also served as a judicial clerk in Marion County for Michael J. Alloy, who is now a federal magistrate judge, and David R. James, who still is in the 16th Circuit.
Okay, makes sense. What do you see, and you've mentioned, mental health, mental hygiene is a part of your role, but what do you see when you look at Taylor County as a whole? Either what's come across in front of your bench in your current role, or as you see looking forward, what do you see are our biggest challenges as Taylor County?
Well, I'm sure you can read in the paper every day that one thing that we've been dealing with, unfortunately, in recent years is a huge rise in the level of opiate addiction. 5 years ago, the drug of choice for many individuals was methamphetamines. Unfortunately, the price in those has drastically increased, and they're outside the range of many people. So what we've seen is the return of opiate derivatives. We've seen heroin. We've seen people become addicted to Suboxone. We've seen people become addicted to Subutex. Many of these drugs were originally intended to help people, but unfortunately, we've seen a high rate of addiction and increasing arrests on the basis of that. If you look at a map of the United States, what area has the single highest level of opium addiction? It would be eastern Kentucky. And where do we happen to share a pretty substantial border with? So that's one big challenge Taylor County has in front of it. But I do believe that the state is taking some measures to really try and tackle that problem, and I hope that can be a part of moving forward and improving the situation.
Yeah, that's great. I doubt there's too many people watching right now or listening who aren't affected by that somewhere in their family or friends or someone. It's a pretty bad situation. In looking forward, one of the things we did was we polled the community of questions, and there were some interesting questions for Magistrate, and so just kind of like throw some at you here and see what your responses are. One of the things that continued to come up was a church and state conversation, and again, I think as a populace, some of those folks don't know exactly what role a magistrate plays in some of these things, but where I think marriage laws, some of this was coming around that. Obviously, you do issue marriage license, correct?
No, we do not.
Okay, you don't. So that just comes from
yes.
Yeah.
The only ones who handle that are circuit judges, family court judges, and in rare instances, especially if it's a family member or a friend, Supreme Court justices for the West Virginia court do. Magistrates do not issue. It's not like in Alabama, for example, where the probate clerk does so. Magistrates do not perform marriage ceremonies, nor do they issue marriage licenses.
Okay. Great. One of the questions that kept coming up as well, and we've already touched on the drug issues, really specifically around marijuana charges and charges against them. How much of that do you see? What kind of path forward do you see for us there? Is that a burden on the court system today?
Well, to give you an idea, last year we had 1,644 misdemeanor cases that we handled. About 1,300 of those were ones related to traffic offenses, but the other 300 were crimes that could be punishable up to a year in jail oftentimes. And a fair minority of those are marijuana charges. I can't speak for other counties throughout the state. If I had to say what drugs cause an individual to be arrested most frequently in Taylor County, I would not say it's marijuana. I would probably say it's opiate derivatives, then methamphetamines, then maybe marijuana.
Gotcha. Okay. One of the groups that we polled, and we shout out to Rich Zukowski and his civics class. They're a partner in what we're doing here. They have a lot of questions around the truancy. I mean, I think that's a big topic, and Judge Moats has made that a real. He's rose that up the flagpole over the last few years, and a lot of people are trying to address some of the truancy issues and things for our young folks. What from a magistrate standpoint are you seeing, or what are you involved in to be able to consider some solutions around truancy and obviously the effects beyond that? It's not just the truancy; it's the effects that come from that.
Well, aside from considering things like juvenile petitions, the state legislature in the past year or so has instituted some new reforms of the truancy laws. One of those is creating a wider level of exemptions for what's an excusable absence. So, for example, if you have a relative who is ill, you can have an excused absence. If you yourself are ill, you can have an excused absence. And one thing, unfortunately, that I think was an unintended consequence of that is that you've seen a lot of truancy cases which beforehand may have been prosecuted, now are not being prosecuted. And viewing this as someone who one day hopes to be a father, I think a lot of children, unfortunately, are not getting the level of education they truly deserve because they may be missing 30, 40, 50 days of school, and that really is very hard to make up throughout the year. So hopefully the state legislature will pursue additional reforms. I think their heart's in the right place, but I do think changes still need to be made.
Yeah, okay, makes sense. A couple more on this. Again, these are more questions of how. What is magistrate, how it works. And a question: why do you choose? When do you choose to lower bail on someone, or really? And I guess it goes into how do you make decisions as a magistrate when you go through and you look at making deals and having conversations. What goes through your mind as a magistrate, just from an educational standpoint?
Well, I do try and take into account the circumstances of the charge and the individual that I'm dealing with. When you alluded to lowering bail in certain circumstances, there are a few things I consider when I'm setting their initial bail. I look at their prior criminal record, if they in fact have one. I look at whether or not they are a resident of Taylor County or West Virginia in general. What's the level of risk they have at being a fleeing the jurisdiction. Because there are two main purposes to bail. One is to make sure that they show up to court, and the second is to make sure that they behave while they're on bail. So, for example, if I have a misdemeanor case, as I alluded to earlier, we handle those from beginning to end. If their attorney, if they've been assigned court-appointed counsel, or they hire their own attorney, and that attorney makes a motion to reduce their bond, we'll usually schedule a hearing and consider that. In regard to felony cases, we only handle up to the preliminary hearing, and after that's over, it goes up to the circuit court before Judge Motes. What the preliminary hearing does is it says, well, is there enough probable cause for these particular criminal charges to move forward? And that's really the first bite at the apple that the defendant has to make a motion to dismiss these particular charges. But another thing they often do is they sometimes will make a motion to reduce bond. Then I'll have to hear the argument, decide whether or not it's justified in that case, whether or not they have a family member or a close friend who they can reside with if they have stable employment. There are a variety of factors that I want to make sure, because quite frankly, it's an expense to the county to keep someone in jail if it's unnecessary, and I don't want someone to lose their job if they're going to behave while they're on bond.
Yeah, makes sense. So thank you for coming. What's customary at the end of this is you have the last word. I mean, let the people of Taylor County know what, or let them know what you're thinking and your last word.
Okay. Well, there are a few things I would like the people of Taylor County to know. I would like to remind them, because of the changes in the state law, May 10th of 2016 is your one and only opportunity to vote for magistrate and any other judicial officer in the state. Early voting runs up to May 7th, and you have the opportunity to register to vote until April 19th. I just want the people of Taylor County to know that I've interacted with quite a few of them since I started this campaign, and they are decent, honorable people who really care about this country and making their community better. We've got a lot of problems facing the United States right now, but I do believe America is still a great country, and I don't think there's anything wrong here that an election can't fix. So I thank you for your time, and I hope you'll consider me when you go to vote on May 10th. Thank you.
Great. Thank you. Good luck.
Appreciate it.